Allonte gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. "I think we're lost, Mercedes." He peered through the windshield, his eyes wide with worry. They had taken a wrong turn somewhere, a simple mistake, but this road felt different. It was called October Lane. The street signs were old and rusted, leaning crookedly like tired old men. A thick, eerie fog clung to the ground, swirling around the tires of their car. It smelled strange here, like damp, decaying leaves, and something else, something cold and metallic, like old pennies. The trees lining the road were bare and skeletal, their branches reaching out like bony fingers, scratching at the gloomy grey sky above. Mercedes just rolled her eyes and fiddled with the radio, which was spitting out nothing but static. "Relax, Allonte, you worry about everything." She was always the practical one, the one who didn't believe in ghosts or monsters under the bed. To her, this was just another forgotten street on the edge of town, a place the mapmakers had missed. "It's just an old road. We'll turn around at the end and be back on the highway in 5 minutes. Stop being such a scaredy cat." But even as she spoke, she couldn't help but notice how quiet it was, too quiet. There were no birds chirping, no sounds of distant traffic, just the low hum of their car's engine and the unsettling silence of October Lane. Suddenly a low, moaning sound echoed from the woods beside them. It wasn't an animal sound, it was long and mournful, like someone in terrible pain. Allonte slammed on the brakes. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice trembling. The sound came again, closer this time. It seemed to vibrate through the very air, making the hairs on his arms stand up. The fog outside thickened, pressing against the car windows like a ghostly hand. For the first time, a sliver of fear crept into Mercedes's heart. She tried to laugh it off, but the sound was too strange, too unnatural. It was a sound that didn't belong in their world. "Okay, you win," Mercedes said, her voice a little shaky. "Let's get out of here, now." Allonte didn't need to be told twice. He jammed the car into reverse, his foot pressing hard on the gas pedal, but nothing happened. The engine sputtered, coughed, and then died completely. He tried to start it again, and again the key just clicked uselessly. They were stuck on a creepy, deserted road, with that horrible moaning sound getting louder and louder. The silence that followed the dead engine was somehow even worse. They were completely and totally alone, or so they thought. Panic began to bubble in Allonte's chest. "The car's dead, it's completely dead," he yelled, yanking on the door handle. He stumbled out into the cold, damp air, followed closely by Mercedes. She pulled out her phone, her thumb swiping frantically across the screen. "No signal," she muttered, a real sense of dread finally washing over her. Not a single bar. They were cut off from everything. No car, no phone. Just the two of them standing in the middle of this nightmare street. The fog was so thick now they could barely see 10 feet in front of them. The world had shrunk down to this one terrifying lane. That's when they saw it. At the far end of the street, a figure emerged from the swirling mists. It was tall and unnervingly thin, its limbs long and jointed like a spider's. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, shambling toward them slowly but purposefully. It wore dark, tattered clothes that seemed to melt into the shadows around it. They couldn't see a face, only a dark, hollow space where a face should have been. The moaning sound was coming from the figure, a low, guttural groan that seemed to promise terrible things. It wasn't running, it didn't have to, it just kept coming, getting closer with every step. "What is that thing?" Mercedes whispered, her skepticism completely gone, replaced by pure terror. The figure raised one of its long, spindly arms and pointed a single bony finger directly at them. That was all it took. Allonte grabbed Mercedes's hand. "Run!" he screamed. They didn't look back. They just ran, their feet pounding against the cracked pavement. Their breath came in ragged, panicked gasps. The sound of their own frantic footsteps was drowned out by the scraping, dragging sound of the creature behind them. It was faster than it looked, much faster. Their only hope was a dark, dilapidated house looming on their right. It was a 2-story Victorian with peeling paint, boarded-up windows, and a porch that sagged sadly. It looked like it hadn't been lived in for 100 years. It was the kind of house you tell scary stories about. But right now, it was their only chance for survival. "In there!" Allonte shouted, pulling Mercedes toward the rotting porch steps. The front door was slightly ajar, hanging crookedly on one rusted hinge. Without a second thought, they scrambled inside. slamming the heavy wooden door shut behind them and plunging themselves into darkness. The air inside the house was thick and musty, smelling of dust, decay and something else. Something sweet and cloying like old perfume. Darkness enveloped them, broken only by thin slivers of grey light filtering through the cracks in the boarded-up windows. They could hear the creature outside, its long fingernails scraping against the wooden door, searching for a way in. Allonte and Mercedes pressed themselves against a wall, their bodies trembling, neither daring to make a sound. The house was silent, but it felt watchful, as if the very walls were listening to their terrified heartbeats. Every creak of the old floorboards sounded like a gunshot in the oppressive quiet. As their eyes slowly adjusted to the gloom, they could make out the shapes of furniture draped in white cloths, like silent ghosts waiting in the dark. A grand staircase swept up into the shadows of the second floor. Cobwebs as thick as cotton candy hung from the ceiling and clung to every surface. They had to find a place to hide, somewhere the creature couldn't reach them. Tiptoeing carefully across the creaking floor, they moved deeper into the house, away from the front door, where the scratching had become more frantic, more aggressive. They found themselves in what must have been a study or a library. Books with faded, cracked spines lined the shelves, their pages swollen with dampness. A large, ornate desk sat in the center of the room, covered in a thick layer of dust. It was there, hanging crookedly on the wall above the desk, that Mercedes saw it, a calendar. It was brown and brittle with age. She wiped away a layer of grime with her sleeve, her heart pounding in her chest. The picture on the calendar was of a smiling family in old-fashioned clothes, posing in front of this very house, but it was the date that made her blood run cold. The page was turned to a single month, October, and the year, printed in bold, faded letters, was 1925. Allonte. "Look," she breathed, pointing a trembling finger. Allonte's eyes widened in disbelief. 1925? That was impossible. It had to be a mistake, a prank, an old decoration left behind. But then it all started to make sense. The old-fashioned street signs, the lack of a phone signal, the way the world outside seemed to stop at the edge of this lane. This wasn't just an old house. They were in an old time. The realization hit them like a physical blow, stealing the air from their lungs. They weren't just lost, they were trapped in the past. The truth was more terrifying than any monster. October Lane wasn't just a place, it was a time, a moment from the past, repeating over and over again, a trap laid for anyone unlucky enough to take that wrong turn. They were stuck here in 1925 with no way back to their own time. The world they knew, their families, their friends, their entire lives might as well have been on another planet. They were ghosts in someone else's history, and the horrifying creature outside was the warden of this strange, timeless prison. It was all a horrible, unending loop, and they had just stumbled into it. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the front of the house. The creature had broken through the door. Heavy, dragging footsteps began to echo through the hallway, coming closer. The low, mournful groaning started again, louder and more menacing than before. It was hunting them. They were mice caught in a maze, and the cat was getting closer. Panic seized them. They had to hide. Now. Allonte spotted a small closet door tucked away under the grand staircase. He yanked Mercedes toward it, pulling the door open with a loud creak. They squeezed inside, pulling the door shut, just as the shadow of the tall figure fell across the library doorway. Huddled together in the cramped, dark space, they held their breath. The closet smelled of mothballs and old wool. Through a thin crack in the door, they could see the creature step into the room. It moved with that same jerky, unnatural rhythm, its long arms sweeping from side to side as if feeling its way through the darkness. Its hollow face seemed to scan the room, searching. Allonte and Mercedes didn't dare breathe, didn't dare move a muscle. They knew with a certainty that chilled them to the bone that if this thing found them, their story would end here, forever lost in the haunted autumn of 1925. The dragging footsteps stopped right outside the closet. A long, terrifying silence hung in the air. The only sound was the frantic pounding of their own hearts. They could hear the creature, right on the other side of the thin wooden door. It was so close they could almost feel its cold presence. They were trapped, not just in the closet, not just in the house, but in time itself. And the monster of October Lane had found them. The doorknob began to slowly, deliberately turn.